How's it going today? Put all the buttons on the wrong way. But I'm here. So a little bit late. Sometimes nature has its own schedule. Sorry. Um, Tonight we're going to talk about the technical aspects of game design briefly and not too technically. So don't be worried. Rules or not to rule, and a few other smatterings of uh, potpourri topics that may come up. Um, so earlier today uh, was discussing, and last night was discussing something. Really, what I did is I wanted to see whom is seeing anything I put on Twitter or anywhere else for that matter. I have a lot of followers, well, a fair amount, 1,500 or something like that. And every once in a while, I'll run into somebody who acts surprised about what I'm doing, what games I'm playing, and what games I'm making. And I'm surprised because it's all I tweet about, and somehow they still are unaware of it. Not their fault, just trying to square that circle. So, what I did is I put out a question about how people come up with ranges for missile weapons in their custom RPGs, because who isn't making one? um, and the reason I chose that as a question was that I've done at least two, if not three, videos about uh, hard data, what I call it, and so I just wanted to see if anybody connected. So, and as usual, there's a little bit of misunderstanding because I don't always write the best. I'm always told, don't write long sentences, people won't read them. Okay, write a shorter sentence, but sometimes then they're misunderstood because they're missing valuable information. So some people thought I was inquiring as to how to go about this method. I already have a method. It was just interesting to see other people's methods. And some were, one guy said, or person, I shouldn't say guy, I don't know what their sex was or gender or whatever, but one individual said, I play test it till it's fun. Wasn't quite sure what that meant. Another individual said, I look it up on ACKS, the ACKS, the was it Adventure Conquest Kings system or something, if I got the acronym right, from Alex Macris. So I thought that was funny. So I asked Alex. I haven't gotten a reply yet. I don't think he's online today, but I asked him, I said, how do you go about it, just for interest's sake? How I do it is simple. I like to use real world stuff. I don't really see the benefit in play testing or super wild guesses or trying to backfit something from anecdotal evidence. It's just easier to go, how far does an arrow fly? And you can look that up, but you might not get the result you're looking for because there's different ways to judge that. And there's all sorts of different um, variables that go into it. Reference books aren't as concrete as some people think they are in some cases. So the best thing to do is just to uh, use a calculator. And no, I don't mean like an old solar calculator. There's calculators for all sorts of different measurements. Calculator.net or .org will show you what I'm talking about. They're usually JavaScript or whatever website calculators. And one does velocity drop, which is just gravitational forces, air frictional forces on something moving through the air, whether it be a ball or a bullet or an arrow. So just with a little bit of information, uh, you know, how much does an arrow weigh approximately? Easy enough to figure out. How long is it approximately? Also easy to figure out. And then what's the average speed of one leaving the bow based on the pull? Also not that difficult. About 300 feet per second is good enough. And you put that into the calculator, just type those things in and hit calculate, and the thing will give you an answer. So I use that, and that comes up with the range of the arrow. So that way I know if I'm on a grid system like a dungeon, and each square equals whatever 2 feet or whatever, now I know how far that thing's going to fly. If I have a battle map out for an encounter, one person says, "Well, I wing it," and and everybody who's looking for ease goes, "Yeah, that's the best way to do it." Fair, but not very consistent. And I do like to have encounters. You're free to do it any way you want, but I do like encounters where I have everything plotted out. And so this works real great for that. It just gives me a little bit of a, short, medium, and long, put them out in feet, and people can use them any way they want that way. So somebody else asked, well, what about spell range? Well, see, now there's something where, just coming up with what you think feels right makes more sense because it isn't real, but a bullet or an arrow is, and you can judge that using a little bit of physics. Spell, what is it? I guess it all depends on what you want out of your magic users in your game. So I use these kind of things real simply. There's another one that will calculate speed or time traveled versus a distance. So that works with maps as far as how far can things move based on how fast they're going or how long they're moving at a certain rate, things like that. Real easy to get. Calculator.net, calculator.org, or just put in measurement calculator and you'll get these sort of things. Makes life real easy, makes things real simple. You don't have to be digging around through a bunch of sources or playing guesswork. So everybody always looks at that sort of thing as being, well, you're adding complexity. I don't see it that way. I see it as a real easy way to get some answers. I'm not asking the players to use this mathematics or even have to consider it. It just gives me an answer to a question that I can put in my rule book. Real simple. I don't see that I need anything other than that anymore. Everybody's talking about less rules or rule less. And Rob Kuntz has come out and kind of pushed on the idea of Gary saying, well, D&D wasn't rules. And some people like to seize upon that as saying, see, it isn't about rules at all. I don't know that that's what really he meant. I think really what he was saying was the play, the heart of the whole idea is people in conversation, in play, using imagination. The rules are secondary. But the definition of game is a competition based around rules. You have to have some guidelines, but having as minimal as possible in a world of hobby gaming where everybody's pushing for more simplicity and less complexity, fine. What do you really need? And how technical does it need to be? Well, I think I've covered the flying objects thing. The movement thing is fairly simple too. Everything else really is based on the skill of the individual that I can think of, like traps or detecting secret doors or something like that, like a thief would do. It all just ends up being probability, no matter what dice face you use. it all just ends up being probability. So you can just you can easily use whatever you want, pardon me, to come up with those ideas. Um, it makes a real simple system. What do I really need? Some percentile chances for things like turning undead, for detecting traps, for identifying scrolls, for and that's it. Everything else can be imaginative. So yeah, so that's the interest. I mean, that's really all there is to it. I don't at this point. Um, sorry. Um, I don't know what else there is to put into it. I think that you can easily make a framework based off of just that and play it out from there. Now, if you're going into some other genre, you might need a few other things for framework, psionics or something like that. But one-page rules for whatever you're doing really shouldn't be that difficult. You know, as far as using the mathematics or the calculators, to me, that's just a time saver as far as creating your rules. That's all. Sure love to know why people come and go so damn fast. I don't know what. Sorry if I sound distracted. It's because I constantly see one or two people show up for less than 30 seconds and then leave. It's like, is there something coming out of my nose? What is it that drives people off so quickly? But anyway, um, it doesn't. I understand people have this huge aversion to bringing up, technical stuff or mathematics. People, oh, that sounds burdensome and tedious, but it's not. It's not like it's collegiate, trigonometry. I'm just talking about using a simple tool to input a couple of questions and get output that's easily marked down in your rule set. It's really not that much. Um, so it's really all I use for my game. It doesn't need anything more than that. Sure, you've got to have interesting mechanics in the world of uh, magic and things like that. But as far as just constructing a approximation, I hate to use I want to use the word simulation, but that makes people go screaming in terror too. Oh, I don't want a simulation. What I'm talking about is simulating gravity. If you're in anything from D&D to Gamma World, you've got gravity. You're not floating around in the air, unless you cast a fly spell or something. So if you throw up a rock in the air, sucker's going to come back down, right? So you're simulating gravity. It's not a real world. So the gravity is simulated. You may think, well, I don't even consider it. Well, you would if you had a player that said, hey, I'm going to throw this rock up in the air and it'll come back down. Gravity. So gravity exerts itself on a moving body that's flowing through air. So there you go. Simple stuff. So anyway, my light RPG is fairly simple. It the premise of the game, you can use it to do whatever you want, but my premise, what I put into it in my worlds was the idea of multiple worlds that are connected via door. like a dimensional door or something like that, or a porthole. And paracosmic comes from paracosm, which is a fancy word for a detailed, made up fictional world. If you look up paracosm, uh, like on something like Wikipedia, it will explain it in more depth. It's kind of a psychological term, but one of the examples is Middle Earth from Lord of the Rings. So I thought, hey, this is kind of a neat deal. And the convergence is there's numerous paracosms that are all connected via this kind of network of portholes or dimensional doors, paracosmic convergence. So uh, one of the other things that I had excuse me, I don't know if anybody's there or not. I don't think there is. Um, Sorry for the. Well, I don't think anybody's even here to take this. Anyway, anybody in YouTube? This thing is always seems like it's like messing with me. I can't tell if there's somebody in here or not. Huh? Yeah. So Paracosmic Convergence is a RPG I came up with um, that connects imaginary worlds. What paracosm means is imaginary world together using dimensional doors. Uh, One of the things that was talked about recently that I chimed in on was the idea of hit points. I don't like them. Other people expressed their dislike of them as well. The system is relatively unique in that it has a one roll combat resolution. With one roll of the die, you determine whether you've missed, you've hit, and if you've hit, how severely you've hit. Now, optionally, because some people insist that it bogs down the game, I can't disagree more. But if you want to make it, I've made it an option just because some people are so insistent. There's a location, hit location, which I highly recommend using, but it's not necessary. Either way, you get a very fast narrative combat resolution that doesn't have anything to do with very numbers. I always look at D&D combat. You know, I use my +1 sword and I roll to hit, and I've done 7 points of damage to. It's all about how many points of damage, how many hit points left. It just becomes a game of counting, and the whole discussion is mostly focused around that mathematics. Whereas mine is, uh, you've struck a mighty blow to the orc, and if you use the hit location, it will tell you where the arm. Perhaps you've cleaved it right off, or put a deep gash, and the orc is bleeding severely. So those are the kind of wounds you'll incur. Um, it isn't a matter of points or such. You can bleed out. You can just be cut up or bludgeoned to death if it's a warhammer or something like that, or run through. Some pole arms, spears, some swords are a stabbing motion more than a cutting motion. So you have three kinds of damage that can be done: piercing, cutting, and bludgeoning. And so those are how things are affected. If you take a punch to your nose, that's bludgeoning. If they hit you hard enough in the nose, it may break your nose. Things like that. So those kinds of wounds have effects. A broken nose will stun you temporarily, and it'll stay marked on your sheet as being negative to your looks. Your looks isn't some attribute that you roll up, but you can have a good-looking character, exceptionally good-looking. But if a good-looking character gets his nose broken or her nose broken, they won't be as good-looking, and the bonuses that come with that will be negated. Things like that. You can develop a limp if the wrong bone is broken and you don't get it fixed magically or healed properly in the right period of time. It may produce a limp. Things like that. You can lose digits, your fingers. You can lose, your whole arm, even your head if the strike is right, and those go with you. It's a very bloody system that way. But that I made it so because I wanted combat to be consequential. I wanted it to be dramatic. I wanted it to be somewhat gory, and there's reason for that. I hear a lot of people complaining about murder hobos. My solution to the murder hobo is making combat difficult. In that even if you succeed, it may have permanent consequences. You may beat that little gaggle of kobolds because you're much higher level than them, but that one little bugger may get that lucky shot where he pokes out one of your eyes or something like that, just an example. So it'll make the player consider going into combat seriously, and we'll try to avoid it at all costs because of the lethality of it. So, plus, again, it takes care of hit points and makes a more immersive game, in my opinion, where you're wearing your wounds, sometimes permanently. So there's healing, so you're not going to be necessarily permanently marred if you have the right healer. So, and this goes across all genres. My game is not about just fantasy. So you may need a medic if you're fighting on the beaches of Normandy or something like that, or you may need a cleric or a wizard that can regenerate your bone or something like that. So it's very skill based. I like the idea of having skills. So I'm not a fan of the attributes. Some people say that means you're not OSR. I disagree. It's just a choice. It makes a more unique character if you can customize it heavier. Any other questions? I had two people in here. Now I only have one, unfortunately, but feel free to communicate, ask questions, say hi. Let's make it a discussion instead of a sermon. Anybody have anything to say or talk about or comments, such as anything we're discussing here? Well, I'll look for it. Hopefully somebody can speak up. I remember that there's a considerable delay between me asking something and somebody replying. So moving on. world building and storytelling, I have extensive random tables. You can roll up a whole planet, a whole continent, a whole city using my RPG. You're welcome to make whatever you want. You're encouraged, you're not required, but strongly encouraged to put one of the dimensional doors I was bringing, at least one I was talking about earlier, in your world. What I'd like to have eventually, should this thing take off, is some repository for worlds that people want to share, and or um, a license system for them to create modules, or and put all these worlds that people come up with in a database where they have the connection, so that you have it all mapped out eventually when people explore it. That's what I'd like to do. But yeah, you know, if you and your group just want to make a campaign world on your own and whatever, uh, that's fine too. But it comes with several of its own. I have one called Mequanica, which is a continent uh, that's inside a larger campaign world that kind of emulates roughly Earth, in that the geography is similar but not identical, and have various continents uh, across that world, kind of a fantasy world. Working on a sci-fi world. Also, I have plans for a horror world. There's a modern, kind of a well, not D20 in that it's uses those rules, but the same kind of thing. Modern, like today, contemporary, for lack of a better way to put it. So, where you can adventure in the real world as it is today. Uh, I'm a war gamer. I started out playing war games before I started RPG. So I love to see wargaming melded together. I encourage that. There's splat books that I have made up that transcend historical military history. There'll be ones that have uh, my fantasy factions in it, and there'll be some that'll just be generic fantasy, sci-fi, horror factions that people can use for their own purposes. I tend to want a lot of splat books because I like the idea of a modular campaign type of thing where somebody can just, modular is one way to put it. I suppose another way to put it would be like a salad bar. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, put it all together, make a big pile. So it'll have a lot of support. It already has quite a bit. So, there's a fantasy mass rules system attached to it. I plan on expanding that to the other genres, and I demoed that about a week ago. It's kind of a chain mail thing, so uh, I was kind of shooting to be chainmail ish, but chainmail is kind of confusing for a lot of people. It's spread out over multiple books and magazines. This is just a couple of pages all put together and a little bit clearer to understand, but the same premise. It has the ability to be medieval historic, and it also has the fantasy section of it. So, any detailed questions, comments? Sure love to have audience participation. Feel free to speak up, and the chat's open. I can see what you're saying. Feel free to have comments. So, while we're talking about rules or lack thereof, I think it's important to say an absolute lack of rules means absolute chaos. Everybody wants simple and easy, understandable, but if you don't have some guidelines that create structure uh, in your world, whatever world that is that you're playing in, there has to be a foundation. So it's just a matter of having as little as possible to govern the physics in your world, even if that physics is different than the one in the real world, and then leaving it at that. Um, I'm going to start talking more. I have discussed free Kriegspiel, which is kind of another term for a ruleless thing. And basically, the mantra of free Kriegspiel is rulings, not rules. If you have a GM or a DM that's come up with uh, an adventure one-off or campaign, they obviously know their world very well. And if you have confidence and trust in that GM, and you should, otherwise, why are you playing? Then you should be able to abide by their rulings without large volumes of rules to have to learn and interpret and memorize. It's fairly simple to judge something like, can this person jump this chasm? Or is there a chance that they might not be able to clear it? And then just say, well, okay, based on that, looks like you might have some difficulty, but might be able to make it. So, all right, he falls down on a roll of 1 or 2, just off the top of your head, something like that. Real simple stuff, just to keep the game moving and make it more of a narrative than a war game filled with procedures and heavy duty rules. So it's okay to come up with that kind of flexibility as long as it remains consistent. Once somebody rules something, comes up with a ruling, that should be notated so that for ease, for memory, and just to remain consistent, the next time you play, should that scenario occur, like the example, jumping a chasm, you've already got all the information you need because it was made. And that ends up creating a body of rules in of itself. But as long as they're just guidelines that everybody can reference, mostly the DM, that's really all you need. So, and that's really rules light versus a rules heavy. We want rules heavy. Again, I have that wargamer background, so let me try to keep it in RPG terms. Uh, you know, Roll Master or something like that, which seemed much more detailed in rules. The way they cover all these things is instead of having to come up with it in your mind, it's all covered. Every stone is unturned, from the most minute detail about fitting into your armor or whatever, all the way out to spells and such. So a real rule intense war game, if you know war games, would be something like Advanced Squad Leader. That's almost a college course in itself. So keeping it rules light just means really just leaning on your DM to make the right call should it need it. So I'm my game's somewhere in the middle. It gives you enough information and enough rules that you can jump in as a new player, um, or create something as a DM, role creator, without having to go, well, I have to figure this out myself, but not so intense that you end up, being something like heavy D&D or something like that, where every little procedure requires die rolling or tables or something like that. So it's a good sandbox system. Uh, what I wanted to do with these things is make them similar to the kind of stuff I played back in the late 70s and early 80s outside of D&D, the kind of small indie games that I bought at my local game store. There were rules light. They were also pocketbook light. They may not be chock full of glossy color photography, but they're just a good, solid guideline to start with. And you can jump right onto the table and play without a lot of investment in study and memorization, stuff like that. That's pretty much what I was looking for. You'll if you buy it, or if you come to my Discord and try it, you'll immediately see influence from other things. There is a very West End Games D6 influence to some of the skill set rules. The combat is unique because I came up with it myself. But so every once in a while you go, oh, he got that from. Yeah, I got that from. I didn't steal anything. I'm not plagiarizing anything, but you're always influenced by the people that come before you, whether that be in movies or music or art or whatever. And so, yeah, there's some concepts that are borrowed from other systems that you'll recognize, but they're put together in a unique way to provide a unique narrative experience that doesn't require a lot of procedural rules and stuff. We do have a big community at Disco. Well, big relative to who, I suppose. Big for me, and hopefully bigger as we go on. But there's quite a few people in a lot of games. I'm in a relatively unique position where I have a lot of time. Sounds like a good thing, but it's really not that great of a thing. But in the interim, until I can change that situation, I'm open to a lot of gaming. So I have a myriad of games that people can come and play on the Discord server. And I'm on Twitter, of course. You probably are here from Twitter. If you're not, if you're here from YouTube, I'll put out those links as well. But come on into the Instagram. I'm also on Instagram, because why not? But come on into the Discord and join the discussion at your leisure. Maybe jump in on one of the games. Right now, somebody keeps coming and going, but here's the link in YouTube for the Discord. Right now, the big game going on is Star Wars West End Games RPG. There's also a Star Wars play-by-post-war game. And coming up soon is Greyhawk Original Dungeons and Dragons. We have 4 to 5 people for that. I could use a couple of more. I like to get a larger group, usually because there's attrition in groups, in that some people say, yeah, I'll play, and then something comes up last minute and they can't end up playing. So it's always good to overbook a little bit for that reason. So anything else? Any questions, comments, criticisms? Love to hear from people. There's a lot of people coming in and out. If you're going to come in, why not stay around a while and say hi and discuss the topic a little bit. Here's my Twitter. If you can see a lot of things going on there. There you go. So, that's about all. It's kind of a quickie. Don't have my co-host. There was something else I wanted to discuss, though. I hit the hit points. I hit the arrow thing. Just made a show recording about VTTs, which is what we do through Discord. Can get you involved in gaming online through VTT. Love to have people play test the Paracosmic Convergence. It's got a fairly different way of setting up a character. Gives your character a little bit of unique differentiation between others. I don't like some of these games where you just go, I'm rolling up a wizard, but you're a wizard and the wizard at the other table. The only difference is the name, you know. Maybe the scores are slightly different, but they kind of become cookie cutter. And here, there's some minor background stuff that you can roll up to put in your character to give it a little spice, give it some motivation, give it an origin without the novel type of stuff that some people like to write about their character. I don't want to hear a life story, and you're not going to roll up a life story using my system, but you will get origin, you will get class, you will get some basics that all contribute to how you might play the character and might even give the character some reasons to go adventuring on specific adventures. So it's I don't recall seeing anything like it, but I hate saying unique because I don't have the encyclopedic mind that some of these folks do. Some people are such huge connoisseurs that they can go, oh yeah, that's like this rule set from 1973, blah, you know, something I've never heard of. So has somebody else done something similar? Maybe. I've never seen it though. It seems fairly unique to me. So gives you some motivations, gives you some advantages, gives you some disadvantages, along with some attributes. Attributes in my game are not like D&D. They're not scores that can be modified or moved up and down. You either have it or you don't. They're just a few descriptors that give you some bonuses and help flesh out the core of your character. The rest is skills. So I like skill-based. I like being, I don't think that, give me an example. You're a fighter, okay, but maybe you specialize in swords or warhammers or whatever. So you can chase down different skills within a class. And I know there's people who go, well, that's just like this thing or whatever. Yeah, that's not the necessarily super unique part. I just like to have skills. I think it works well within the rest of the system and helps create some needed customization for the player. So trying to think of what else there might be. I have a city that is something you can put in any campaign you want, kind of a prefab city, the starting point for new creators that comes with the game. So it has a map, description of different buildings and the lore within it and things like that. So it's kind of a starting point. That's another feature of the system. Some of the games that I'm running in it, if you want to play, I have a World War II scenario about Normandy. I have a fantasy scenario about trying to find a wizard at his tower in amongst a orc and human war. There's a kind of post-apocalyptic sci-fi scenario. Those are a couple of the big ones that I'm running for people. I just like the idea of looking at some of the different genres and see how this system can handle them. Give people a little bit of an option because not everybody's all about fantasy all the time. There's also an arena battle mini game that's just meant to highlight how the combat works. And in that, you roll up a character and you fight other characters in a kind of gladiatorial arena combat, just so you can get a sense of how the combat works, learn how to do it, and just get right into rumble, you know. So that's just, it's kind of a little demo thing, and I can play that with anybody anywhere. But it's fun to go on Tabletop Simulator because I have a little gladiatorial arena model with miniatures, which isn't strictly necessary. It's just aesthetically it looks neat. So that's a little demo for the combat. So you're more than welcome to play. Anybody got anything to say? Any comments, questions? As I say, I keep asking because I'm hoping for some interaction. I find these whole things much more interesting when there's some interaction. Boy, people are coming and going fast. It must not be very exciting. Anyway, if you want to hear more about the Star Wars game, it's funny how many people are anti-Star Wars these days, but it's an old school Star Wars game from the Lucas era. If you're interested in playing, we have a lot of fun, kind of goof off, and it's kind of sometimes it's a comedy and sometimes it's a tragedy. I try to make my games gritty, realistic, a little bit raw without getting too gross, but I have players that sometimes get silly, so we have fun with it. The play-by-post games are more of a militant vibe. Oh, BattleTech. Are you a BattleTech player? I've got that going as well. Kind of forgot about that. You need 5 people for BattleTech. And you can play one of 2 campaigns, or both if you want. But both of them need 5 people. And the first one is a kind of I call them bowling league campaigns. And what I mean by bowling league is that it's a somewhat long-term campaign that meets on a regular basis and plays with the same group of people. And that one is the 4 Succession War. Use the Succession War board game from FASA. And some of the not every battle, because we all have a life to live, but some of the battles are fought out using Battle Force 2, and in some cases BattleTech. And each player has one of the factions. There could be more than 5, but it's hard to rustle up a party, so the minimum is 5. The other one is a planetary BattleTech campaign. They have at least 2 people on a team, and one's the invader and one's the defender, and you're playing a succession of scenarios where if the attacker succeeds, they advance to the next scenario in the direction of their objective. But if they fail, they might fall back or stall, and you have to you either run out of supplies, mechs, and people, and the invasion fails, or you drive through the defenses of the enemy and reach your objective and conquer the continent that you're on, basically. So those are the 2 BattleTech games, and they're run remotely as well. I don't have in person. I've had people ask me, "Are these in person?" No, I don't have anybody to play with. I have to play online, and I'm hoping that other people that are missing people and otherwise couldn't play can connect, and we can all enjoy it together. But I'm not doing anything in person because I'm here and you're not. And I don't have the money to make it to many of the conventions, unfortunately. I'd love to attend them all and run these games in person at conventions, but money, 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 ain't got none. So, anything else? Questions, comments, anything? Sure love to hear from you. So, oh, that's shit. That's me. No? All right then. Well, I've stuttered and stammered enough through this thing. Um, but I'll just stay on a little while. Maybe somebody will come on that wants to be chatty. I do enjoy a chat. To me, these things work better as a Q&A or a back and forth. I'm not like other streamers that can proselytize from the pulpit for long periods. Um, anything? Anybody? No? No? Okay. It's closing in on an hour. I haven't gotten any conversation out of this. I've said my piece, so uh, these will get more exciting. I prefer to have a guest. I have an opportunity to have some guests. I usually have a co-host. She's not feeling well, and I don't play it. I don't do well on my own. So, anyway, whatever. It's good enough. Thanks for joining. If you joined, love to have some feedback. Love to have you drop a comment, drop a like, maybe share this out. Take a look at some of the other things that I have on my channel. I also have Rumble, and that has what's on Rumble is not on YouTube as well. The content is different. So check them both out. Now I've got Twitch running too. So like, subscribe, share, please, and 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 do talk. I'd like to hear people's takes on rules versus ruleless. I'd like to hear people share their experiences with VTT. I'd love to hear some of my players come out here. Most of them don't seem to be into that kind of communication, but I'd love to have people who are interested in gaming. I much prefer playing over talking. So go on. You got a couple of links there. Check them out. Hope to see you there. Thanks for stopping by. I'm gonna call it a night. Well, that's weird. It doesn't want me to end the stream. It literally will not let me end the stream. Why not? What the hell? All right, well, let's try it this way.